Welcome to Midlife Matters, where we celebrate women's wisdom and wit. I'm Georgianne Lucia, your host, and I'm delighted to introduce today's guest, Karen Annis, who is a licensed clinical social worker, and today we're going to be talking about her role as board president of the Meriden Humane Society, which is a no-kill animal shelter and rescue organization. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Who do we have with us here today?
This is my friend Tank.
Mm-hmm.
Tank is an alumni of the Meriden Humane Society, and
Okay.
Tank is what we call a foster fail, in the sense that I fostered him, and it was the very best kind of failure. You foster and decide that it's not temporary, but you'd like to make the animal a permanent part of your home.
Great. So that's a very different way of thinking of fail.
Absolutely.
Right. So a bit of a misnomer, maybe.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in this case. A little bit about Tank.
So Tank was a rescue from about 6.5 years ago. The family was getting a divorce or, having a separation.
Right.
And Tank was really just shut down in the shelter and not doing well in a shelter environment. So a decision was made that he was going to go into foster care, and he came into my house. And I say very famously that I knew right away that I was in trouble, and for 6 or 9 months I fostered him. He had a few medical things that we needed to sort out first, and then I finalized the adoption.
Good.
So Tank really just blossomed and came out of his shell very nicely, like the dog that we all hoped that he was inside, that we just weren't seeing in that shelter environment.
Well, he's a great success story.
He is a great success story. Yeah.
Okay. Your organization is not part of like the state or national Humane Society?
No, we're a standalone organization, and we are not affiliated with the Connecticut Humane Society or any of the other local rescues.
Okay. And so tell us about the range of services that the organization offers and what it takes to keep it running.
Sure. So the range of services, we really provide comprehensive services to both cats and dogs, youngest kittens and puppies to the oldest animals in our shelter. We have a very robust, comprehensive foster care program that really sometimes has more animals than the shelter itself. And in addition to that, we like to provide community outreach in the form of food pantries, educating the public, providing resources to the public who may be having difficulty taking care of their animals or not sure what to do.
Mm-hmm.
We hope that we are a resource to the community, and hopefully we're also a resource to people who want to come and volunteer with us and get something out of it and really feel the reward of taking care of animals. And the second part of your question is, a little more labor intensive. What does it take to run a shelter?
Mm-hmm.
It is an extraordinary effort by a lot of people every day, 365 days a year. Monetarily, our budget is probably about $350,000, of which we spend just about a third of that on vet care alone.
Mm-hmm.
So the quality of animal care is very important. It's one of our highest values. We really pride ourselves on providing each animal not only with the spay and neuter surgery and their vaccinations, if an animal has a medical need that was either known or not known, that we would want it cared for and the animal treated in a humane way.
Mm-hmm. No-kill shelter. So do you have any limits on how long you keep an animal?
No, an animal can stay with us as long as it needs to.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the things that our numbers have really improved in our turnaround in terms of animal readiness to be adopted. But
Mm-hmm.
if an animal does have a medical issue, or some animals sometimes have a social or behavioral issue that we need to work out before an animal is really ready for adopters, or if they need a very specialized adoptive home. So sometimes animals shouldn't be placed with other animals,
Mm-hmm.
or, in a home without children, that sort of thing. We really are committed to waiting and making the right match rather than going on by any specific time limit for the animal.
And are there requirements around who can surrender an animal to the shelter?
The only requirement that we have is that animals have to come from Connecticut, so we
Okay.
don't pull animals from out of state. The
Mm-hmm.
only exception that we have to that is if you were an alumni and you adopted an animal from our organization and then moved out of state, or you were an out-of-state adopter to begin with. We would welcome an alumni back to us, but our lease stipulates that we are a priority for Meriden, surrounding towns, and the state of Connecticut.
Okay, great. And you've been involved with this organization for 11 or 12 years. And what was your original interest?
Honestly, my original interest is probably like a lot of moms. I was looking for a way to teach my child to give back. I really spent my career in a service industry, and I wanted him to have that value of giving back to something.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started volunteering with him, and very quickly made myself available to be a foster parent as well. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that I was asked to join the board.
Okay. And so what other roles have you performed and are you still doing?
So I guess my biggest and most permeating role is volunteer, right?
Okay.
So all of my tasks are of a volunteer nature, whether that is coming on site and, cleaning, feeding, socializing animals, taking animals home in foster care. I'm still a foster parent. I have kittens in my house now. I thought they might be a little bit too busy for this interview, but I do foster cats and kittens. I also foster animals for hospice that just aren't that aren't going to do well in the shelter environment. And I continue as a volunteer board member at this point. So I'm on various committees, whether it be running fundraisers or participating in fundraisers or what have you, I guess.
Tell me some examples of fundraisers.
Sure, we have a lot of fundraisers throughout the year. Our very largest is we have an annual golf tournament in August, and we call it our Putting for Paws Golf Classic. So that is by far our largest fundraiser that we put on throughout the year. But we have a lot of community events. You'll see us at like the Daffodil Festival. A lot of like breweries have partnered with us for evenings where we'll have raffle and merchandise tables, and sometimes we'll host we'll have a comedy event, or I think they did music bingo one time, which was very, very fun. Those sort of things, just really consistently throughout the year. We had a shred event, which was very successful. People delivered all their old documents to be shredded for a donation. That was a very successful fundraiser. So all different things, and we have a wonderful fundraising team that really makes it all happen.
That's great. Being on a board, as I am, and I'm sure being board chair, a lot of governance practices, setting policies, skills required. How did you acquire the skills you needed to assume that role?
Yes, I'm still acquiring those skills, first of all. And I started very differently. I started because the shelter was at risk of closing. Okay. I think I started out of desire to not see that happen, passion for the animals, concern for the animals, and a desire to pick up the skills that were needed. However, I'm sure being a social worker in my profession, certainly, and in nonprofit management, also prepared me to sit on a board and to act with a group of people.
So have you gotten involved in writing bylaws?
Yeah, so we've had a change in bylaws, and I have done a little bit of bylaw committee work. When I first came onto the shelter, there weren't a lot of policies and procedures written, so I've been on a policy and procedure committee just to make sure that our practices are consistent and that, again, every animal is treated with that high quality that we value.
So do you have any oversight of the organization where you as a board report to? I mean, I'm sure funders, I would imagine, would be interested in your results.
Sure.
You do an annual report?
Yeah, so anytime we do an annual meeting where we have a report that we report to a membership body, so anybody can be a member of the Meriden Humane Society. It's paying a small fee, signing up and identifying that you want to be a member basically earns you the right to vote at our annual member meeting. And so we owe our membership constituents. We don't have like a governing body above us per se, other than the membership body that we are accountable to.
And who are some of your community partners? I know you mentioned like there might be small businesses.
Yeah,
maybe large businesses. Yeah,
we've worked with a lot of businesses. The businesses of Meriden and surrounding towns have been just very generous in very big and small ways. For example, we have one resident of Wallingford that runs a very large a pet sitting business, and she actually does a very large fundraiser at the holidays, and we'll get all sorts of businesses all over town, from ice cream places to laundry places to dry cleaners, whatever, to have a bucket for donations for us. So that's certainly one way that a small business can get involved. We have sponsors for our golf tournament. We have people that, that decide to run their own fundraisers for us, whether it be a donation jar. We've had a pizza place in Meriden that put adoptable animals on each pizza box and just advertise our animals that way. So there are lots of really big and small ways for companies to get involved in addition to those kind of larger corporate sponsors.
Do you have any municipal interactions?
We have partnerships with the Meriden Animal Control, and we certainly partner with them on animal rescue cases on a fairly regular basis. Okay. And we're co-located actually in the same building with them.
That clears up some of the confusion that I had.
Yes, we're co-located with them. So we've developed a very nice partnership over the years. Where we're sort of mutually assisting one another.
Okay, and animal control, I would imagine, reports like to some department in Meriden.
I believe they report to the police department.
Oh, the police department. Okay.
Obviously, they're reporting to the city of Meriden.
Yeah, right.
Sure.
So you mentioned you sometimes take in hospice animals, so that would be end of life.
End of life animals.
So that must take, how long have you been doing that? That must take a real certain orientation towards things.
So I've been doing that about as long as I've been fostering. Again, animals that need foster care are often our most vulnerable, right? Yep. So the youngest or the oldest or the most ill. So my very first animal that I ever fostered was a cat that had just had its eye removed. So not a hospice situation, but certainly a recovery from illness where it's just, safer. You get more one-on-one attention. You have somebody, observing the animal for any signs of illness, infection, those types of things. And, at the end of life, you have someone spoiling the animal, hopefully, giving the animal kind of the best quality, but also just observing for that time when the animal is letting you know that it's time.
Okay. And you mentioned getting involved to help your son have that experience of volunteering and of interacting, with the animals. What about your own self? Did you have dogs and cats growing up?
I did. I always had animals growing up. I always was an animal lover growing up. I always probably wanted more than my parents would allow me to have. So yes, it was, it was always going to be a part of my life. Animals, I never thought of adding an animal to my family in a way other than rescuing an animal. Didn't always know that I would get involved this dramatically, but certainly animals and animal rescue was always going to be a part of my life in some capacity.
So let's talk about the staff at your organization, like the different roles people have. I know you've talked about volunteers. But somebody has to organize all that, and you have to have daily things covered, right?
We do, yes. So we have, we have 8 paid staff. They're all part-timers. Again, we rely very heavily on a volunteer base, and we have staff that are directly assigned to the cat areas and staff that are directly assigned to the dog areas. We have a newly hired animal care coordinator that sort of keeps us in line with who's needing to be spayed and neutered and who is due for a vaccination, who needs their heart guard on what day, those types of things that really kind of coordinates all of our animal care needs for both sides of the house. And then we have a part-time shelter supervisor as well that really makes sure that we have a full schedule of volunteers, that again there's somebody qualified to do each particular task that needs to be done at any given time at the shelter.
So I mentioned I do human resources consulting, and a recent project is working with a library in another state, fairly small, it's a community library, and they have issues with some of the employees saying it's not that clear what the volunteers do and what the paid staff does. I mean, that takes a little extra finesse, right?
Yes, and our shelter supervisor is fantastic at doing that, and I think we have pretty carved out roles in terms of our staff. Really kind of taking responsibility for like medications and some things of that nature. The sicker animals, and we have a pretty good role and responsibility set that if you're a volunteer, you usually know why you're coming. So whether it's to clean a particular cat room or we have a kind of a color coding system for our dogs in terms of newer volunteers can take care of dogs that have that are kind of easier, smaller, fewer behavioral issues, whereas our kind of, our stronger dogs, we would want a more seasoned volunteer. So usually when we come in, you're coming in for a specific task, and then the staff also know that they're coming in for a specific task.
How can people help support your effort?
So I think the biggest thing is just, kind of remembering us in donations. Again, that veterinary cost, I think one of the biggest myths about a rescue or a humane society is that we have access to some sort of free veterinary costs.
Oh, right.
And that's just not, that's not the case. We don't have a vet on staff. We take our animals to vets just like you take your animals to vets. If you, see an animal that's compelling, or, that an animal's been injured that we've taken in, or an animal is sick, that it's very costly for us to care for that animal the way that it deserves to be. Right. It deserves to be cared for. Yeah. So, certainly monetary donations to our vet fund, but we're always posting on our social media pages of just supplies that we're in need of, and again, people to volunteer, people to foster, helps us rescue more animals.
So, thinking back to your staff, so you mentioned fundraising, and it sounds like, is that largely volunteer run?
That's all volunteer run. We have a fantastic fundraising team. We're very, very lucky to have them.
Yeah, because that's an art form in itself.
It absolutely is. Yeah. And they just, coordinate. They have everything really, really down to a science, and they coordinate all of the fundraising events for us, constantly looking for new ones, and I'm very proud to say that other businesses are sometimes looking for us to, to partner with us, because, that's a way that they can help give back to the animals.
So what do you do if you have an overflow of animals?
We're not a municipal shelter, so we do have the right and honestly the responsibility to say no if we're too full. And sometimes, sometimes too full means we're at a space capacity. Yeah. But sometimes too full means that, we're at a budget capacity, right? That we, if we continue to take in more animals without the funds to match it, that we wouldn't be doing the animals the service we wanted to be doing. So it's really important for people to understand that about shelters when they say they're full and they're at capacity. And the other thing is that when we don't have enough volunteers, there have been times that, we've been thin on volunteers, and that has affected how many animals we've taken in. So full can mean a lot of things. So, it's really important to get involved and, and to remember the needs of animal shelters.
Those needs things like towels and things for the crates or whatever, the living area. And,
so we collect towels and small blankets, like the kind of the small fleece blankets. Yep. The larger comforters and things like that are a little bit harder to store, but cleaning products, bleach, those types of things, garbage bags always needed. Yep. Obviously canned cat food always needed. There's we have an Amazon and a Chewy wish list, so if people aren't sure what to donate, they can donate things, sneaky little things like meat-flavored baby food is something you might never think to donate to an animal shelter, but boy, if an animal doesn't like you or doesn't like the pill that they have to take, that's an excellent tool, the meat-flavored baby food. But,
so would it be like a Facebook page mostly?
We have a Facebook and an Instagram page. Both Meriden Humane Society is the name of both of them, and we regularly post our wish lists, and then we'll post what items we're most running low on right at that moment. Okay. And we'll change the priorities on the wish list as well to say what we're most in need of at that time.
Absolutely.
So it just depends on kind of what we're running low on.
Right. I mean, I'm thinking even like food pantries or whatever. Sometimes they'll say we have plenty of this, but we need more of that.
Absolutely. And honestly, anything that's donated that can't be directly used by our animals goes into our food pantry. So we do a monthly food pantry for Meriden residents.
For their animals?
For their animals, yep.
Yeah, because with these economic times,
absolutely,
I'm sure that there's growing need.
And if we can avoid having somebody surrender an animal just because they're going through a financial hardship and are having trouble affording food and care for their animal, if we can alleviate that a little bit, then it's one less animal in a shelter, and and we've kept a family together.
Are there any rules about people accessing the food pantry for their pets?
You have to be a Meriden resident for us. A lot of times, if we have a lot of overflow, we'll bring our food to other rescues. Okay. But for our food pantry, it's the first Monday of every month. You have to be a Meriden resident, and you have to just bring us a proof of rabies shot for your animal. So that just kind of proves who you have in your house. And then you tell us what you need, and if we have it, we're happy to accommodate.
That's wonderful. That's a wonderful service. Well, you are a licensed clinical social worker. You're currently working for the Department of Children and Families?
I am,
okay.
Yes.
And you've been doing that for
so I've been with the state of Connecticut it'll be just about 11 years, and I've been with my current position just about 2 years.
Okay. And what is your current position?
So I am a mental health consultant. People know the DCF workers that kind of knock on your door.
Yeah.
There's also a department within DCF that you can access consultants in various subjects. So intimate partner violence, substance use, nursing if a child or a family member has medical needs, educational specialists, and mental health specialists.
Okay. And that focuses on children?
It focuses on children or their families. If a family is struggling with a mental health need, they would also want to consult with me, and I might be able to recommend some services for that social worker to take back to the family as some options for themselves.
Great. So it sounds like you enjoyed that work.
I do.
Yeah,
It
like
certainly parallels the
well,
animal
that was
welfare.
going to be my next question is, what parallels do you see between the work you do in your professional life, not that this is, the board presidency is not requiring professional skills, and the services, to animals?
Sure. So I guess, first of all, there's a lot of parallel in animal welfare and child welfare. Just right now, there's just an explosion of need on both sides, in both sides of my life. There's, there's a lot of need. There's probably sometimes more need. It feels like more need than what the system can accommodate.
Okay.
Both on the child welfare side of the house, we've seen a lot of services, kind of close or go away. And on the animal welfare side of the house, we've also seen some services either increase in price or close or, certainly just become more difficult to provide as much, to meet the need that is currently existing, I guess.
Yeah. You mentioned, which, really struck a chord with me, is that in both instances, there's a seeking of permanency in their lives.
Yes, absolutely. I think, children need permanent relationships in their life, and that's something that I've spent my career committed to. I've spent most of my career in foster care and adoption, and kids need to know that they have a stable, permanent relationship that's lasting a lifetime, and I think animals deserve the same, right? They need to know that come what may in your family, whether it be, they've had an indiscretion and they've had some bad behavior on an animal's part, or a child had some challenges that that a family is not going to give up on them, and that no matter what happens in the life of the family, that pet or that child, both in that parallel way, need to be included.
Wonderful.
So very, very similar themes of of permanency and disruptions and trauma, quite honestly.
Yeah, and that sense of security.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And belonging.
Absolutely.
Right. That's beautiful. Okay, and so we get into midlife. We can look back a little bit and think about how we got to where we are and different options. We maybe said yes, no, and zigzagged. And so what advice do you think you would give your younger self?
Oh, I think I would always give my younger self the advice, whether it be my 20-year-old younger self or my yesterday younger self, would be to worry a little less.
Okay.
The things that, if they're really on your mind, are they really going to be on your mind in 1 year or 5 years? That's really, what my grandmother would say to me, and what I still hear in my head is, this too shall pass. So, really extraordinary times pass, and really difficult times pass. So just kind of knowing and preparing and just kind of relaxing through that journey a little bit more.
Maybe weathering it a little bit.
Weathering it,
with
yes.
the belief that
yes,
it's not permanent.
Absolutely.
When we talk about permanency, but this is not permanent.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, that's beautiful too. Thank you very much. And so what about a favorite quote?
So I love the quote by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a thoughtful, committed group of citizens can change the world, and in fact, it's the only thing that ever has.
Wonderful. So you're part of all of that. It shines through, and thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
This was great.
And tune in to hear other fascinating stories from women on Midlife Matters. I'm Georgianne Lucier, your host. Thank you so much for joining us.